Hello, friends. Welcome to Sky Dancer Podcast. For today's episode, I invited my special guest, Abraham Sedley, my dear friend and a Dharma enthusiast, I would say. Let me say a few words about Abraham. He is a bit of an unusual mix. He started in theoretical physics before turning into a career in programming and technology, in which he often felt that coding itself was a form of art and creativity. He later branched into the world of crypto and so forth as a potential to combine the world of visual art and code together. He came into the Buddhist journey as a result of his studies in physics, and soon after started exploring the aspect of the divine feminine, which eventually led him to the Dakini and his myriad manifestations. Today, he continues to try to bridge the world between art, spirituality, and technologies, with his recent focus on AI in the various areas of human life, while also bridging all of this into the path of his spiritual practice. So, topic of today's episode, the intersection of AI and spirituality, may be quite thought-provoking, but enticing and evolving topic that encourages us to reflect on our values, ethics, and search for meaning in an increasingly complex and interconnected world. Please enjoy our conversation. Hello, Abraham. Welcome to the Sky Dancer Podcast. I'm so thrilled to introduce you to our audience and also welcome you to this exciting podcast. Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the intersection of AI and modern technology and spirituality, which is a quite thought-provoking and evolving topic.
Yeah,
Actually, that encourages us to reflect on our values and ethics and search for meaning in this incredibly complex world.
yeah, big topics, I think, overall. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this intersection, especially about this new renaissance of AI and its intersection with lots of areas of our lives, but especially the areas of spirituality and our practice as well. So yeah, very excited.
So I have a few questions, maybe
Mhm.
more than a few, because you are such an unusual mix and a very interesting person. So can you share insight into your upbringing and how it has shaped who you are today?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Germany and I later moved on into England. I grew up as a sort of a family of immigrants who came into Germany, and I always had this sense of sort of not belonging where I was because I never felt rooted or grasped by a tradition. And so I always felt like I was a bit of a wanderer, almost, so to speak. I grew up in a very Christian, very traditional Christian household. So like religion and spirituality and their form were always really important to our family. And I think that's always kind of created a structure for me. And then I grew up also loving computers. So I got my first computer when I was like 6 or 7. I remember taking it apart. I remember blowing it up at one point. I doing lots of things. I've always loved taking things apart and knowing how they work, for better or for worse. Yeah, that's really kind of informed my upbringing, especially when I was sort of coming into my teenage years. I was really curious about how the universe worked. I really wanted to know why we were here. And so I asked, the bedrock of what we had back then was our religion. And I used to ask our priests, and they used to get very annoyed with me for asking too many questions that they couldn't answer. And at the same time, I think I experienced something that is quite common to what a lot of people is in the West, but also now sort of increasingly around the world, are experiencing, which is a kind of a dehoming from the religion that they're brought up with. They become disillusioned with their religion because it becomes very dogmatic and very rigid. So I went to university to study physics, theoretical physics. I wanted to really, really get into the roots of how the universe works and why, just try to understand it from that perspective. That really actually took me down a very, very interesting road where it opened up more questions than answers. I started realizing just how vast and how deep our existence actually is. That led me down a sort of a renewed spiritual road in my 20s. So I went into many sort of the world religions, and at the same time, I was building a career in technology and in programming. So I worked as a developer by day, and I was practicing as a Taoist, Buddhist, Western occultist, Hindu. I did so many different practices throughout those years, trying to learn as much as I could. At first, I was sort of trying to find a common line throughout all of them, but later on, I realized just how deep and profound these wisdom traditions were. And yeah, many years later, that sort of brought me to where I am now, where I am sort of at the intersection between technology, but also, and more recently, I entered into the field of psychotherapy, and yeah, that's kind of where I find myself today with a mixture of these disciplines.
Yeah, it seems your life, I don't know how old you are, but it seems your life is packed with all these component of technological advancements, spirituality, and psychotherapy. Yeah, already you mentioned some aspect of it, but your relationship with technological advancement and the spirituality and how do these intersect in your journey? You already touched a few, but
Yeah.
mm,
Definitely. So for me, it was a realization, I think early on, as technology was rapidly evolving. At first, I was partaking as a sort of working in the programming industry, developing applications and websites, and just realizing how much easier it was making parts of our lives. And I was looking at all of these things at the time. Just again, technology has really shaped the 21st century, obviously, for better or for worse. And I don't think you can take any of these things as just like black and white. They have a tremendous amount of good that they bring into the world, and but they also allow us to get really distracted and sidetracked. So I think the first time that I really noticed this, I was working in startups in London, and I was got into my kind of the senior portion of my career, and I was realizing that what we were building wasn't really helping anybody. What it was really doing is it was trying to distract people, it was trying to take people's time. We were trying to really optimize and engineer how to best grab their attention. And you hear these stories coming out of Silicon Valley all the time, but it's like when you experience that on the side of building it and you go, this isn't actually helpful to anybody. In fact, it's harmful. It's stealing their attention, and it's stealing their valuable, not just their attention, it's also actually shortening people's attention quite consciously. That was when I started to really realize that I might not be on the right path, shall we say, from a career perspective. Because at the same time, I was going through my spiritual journey and I was doing my practices and deepening my understanding. And I was just like shocked by how different and separate these parts of my lives are. Here I am, trying to do all of these practices, trying to cultivate the good in my life and and virtuous actions and purify my mind. But at the same time, I was actively not aiding anybody else in doing this. In fact, I was hindering them. So that's what really started to kind of lead me down this road of understanding that I needed to really bring those two things into alignment. And rather than, again, seeing technology as an evil, I really do believe that you must work with these things in order to sort of bring them in because actually, again, like I said, it's just a technology is just a tool. It isn't inherently evil or inherently good. When we can use it in order to actually enhance all of these different areas in our lives, then why not spirituality? That's how I've seen it since then. I tried to start, understanding how we could best be used for various applications. And that was right around the time when AI was really starting to take off, especially and more recently. I think everybody has been becoming more aware of this with the advent of large language models, LLMs, Chat GPT, and things like that, where it becomes very interesting, actually. powerful these tools can become. All of a sudden, if you have large, like, different questions that are very difficult to research, or you want to be able to sort of deepen the aspects of your practice, and you want to do this in a dialogical manner, right? You can have a dialogue
Mhm.
with these machines, and they can serve as a dialogue partner in a very meaningful way. And at the same time, I was sort of studying the cognitive science and the benefits of having dialogical relationships, having a relationship of talking with another person, because you might not always have access. And this is the other part of my journey that I was realizing. You might not always have access to a sangha. You might not always have access to spiritual practitioners around you. And
Mhm.
at the time, I definitely didn't. I very cut off, actually. And so at the time, actually, AI was really helpful for me, because I was even able to build very simple models where I was giving them texts of the old masters and just saying to them, okay, try to be the person in this text and talk to me as if you were that text. And you could have a conversation with a text that was written 1,000 years ago. It's things like that that make me really believe that there is a beautiful, beautiful ability to bring technology and spirituality together. So, yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much for your summary of your direct experience in terms of the pros and the cons and your relationship with technological advancement and the intersection with spirituality and so forth. So interesting into this conversation more. However, I would like to bring this to a discussion of evolution of AI and growing significance as a medium, contemporary artistic expressions.
Mhm.
So this is Dakini's Whisper Skydancer podcast, and we deal with Dakinis. We explore the Dakini's expressions. You are one of the AI Dakini artists, I consider. So I invited you here. First of all, growing significance as a medium
Yes.
in contemporary artistic expression. If you could say something about that.
Yeah. So first of all, it's an incredibly generous title to give to somebody. Thank you for it. But I find myself being at this intersection of AI as a growing medium, and as I said, I've already talked about the large language models. But then, as you mentioned, AI art is this other thing that's become so prevalent, and all of a sudden, this area of creativity that we didn't even think about. I mean, I think 7, 8 years ago, I don't think anybody really had this level of AI art in their minds, really, that we're getting now, and it's only improving. So, as I was working on AI at the time, as you said, I think it was actually the first time that I tried my hand at AI art, I suppose, with especially with regards to Buddhist iconography and dakinis, was when I was getting into Tibetan Buddhism and Vajrayana, but I was getting deeper into the practices. I remember I was reading a text, and it was sort of like it was getting into generation stage and visualization, and I just thought to myself about these beautiful expressions and depictions of these dakinis in all of these books and in all texts and all sutras that describe them in such incredible beauty, and how everything is actually the manifestation
Mhm.
of the Dakini. And that really got me at the time. I remember just like that, like everything is the manifestation of the Dakini. So I thought to myself, well, here we have a really probably the most sophisticated black box system that humanity ever built, right? A system that is surprising us in the real genuine sense. Like, we don't know. This is the first time where we're putting things into it, and we're being quite surprised by what comes out of it, and more so by every day, because its capabilities are improving on almost a daily basis. So that's when I thought to myself, we have these really old, beautiful Tonka paintings of these dakinis, but because it's like in this day and age, less art is getting created than like in the Renaissance period of Buddhism. But again, and even with your podcast, I think we're seeing a nice resurgence. There's more. You're still talking to the Dakini artists in the contemporary world and how they're putting it together. So I don't think of myself as an artist. I started thinking of the AI itself as the artist. Well, if I could punch in the right words and basically poke it in the right way and maybe give it the right inputs, maybe I could see all of the different faces and different manifestations of the Dakini through AI
Mhm.
art. That really came to me as an interest of I want to see contemporary depictions of Dakinis more frequently, more widespread as well, in a way that appeals also that can you produce dakinis in such a contemporary manner that and images of dakinis in a contemporary manner in a more widespread manner, because that's of course that's the advantage that we get with AI. We're able to create so many different variations in quite relatively short amount of time, and then can we spread them out to the world and kind of see how it lands with people,
So
right?
that we can relate to each of
that we
us
yes,
modern
so that everybody
contemporary people.
exactly
Mhm.
exactly that.
Yeah,
It's a
so why
beautiful
don't
way.
you show us your amazing
I
art? I already fell in love a few of your you shared with Dakini's Whisper. Uh,
I I really
yeah, the
appreciate it.
background. This is one of yours. Magic
I
Lantern.
Yeah, this is sort of a rendering of Machik Labtron, and I always have to say this with AI art. AI art owes so much to the people who help inform it and the inputs this gets, right? So the piece here, the structure itself, is based on one of Alima's drawings, which obviously who you had on interviewed on an episode just recently. And it's artists like her, like the really talented artists who sit down and create these structures from scratch that allow the AI to then take and expand and elaborate on them. And so it's become a very interesting issue because, and I'll sort of flick through maybe a couple of these to show you an example. This was a sort of an idea of maybe Black Mahakala to some degree, like playing around with that. Prajna Paramita in sort of her entirety. I'll talk about the pros and the limitations right now of AI art. I think you'll definitely see them as you go through. Here are sort of a bit more modern renditions of Machik Labdron. What would she look like as an anime protagonist? What would she look like if she was in an anime? That to me has always been like a very interesting sort of, again, these ideas of taking existing heroines.
Hmm.
But you look at what people are paying attention to these days, and they're paying attention to all their superheroes, Marvel superheroes and anime and Naruto and One Piece and all of the movies. And that's where they're watching these incredible feminine heroines, right? The ones who are doing all of these great feats. And they're relating to them in different ways. And I thought to myself, well, why can't you also create art that relates, again, is modern, is a contemporary interpretation of some of these heroines that we have in Buddhism and relate them to the heroines that they see on their screen normally in the same art style, in the same way. So it becomes like I think the word that you use perfect is like so that they can relate, so that each person can relate to it in their way. That's the advantage of AI, is that AI allows you to create relatively many iterations relatively quickly with many different styles. Like, I mean, I could, again, and I as an artist, as an actual physical hand-drawn artist, I'm useless. And that's why I don't consider myself an artist at all. If anything, I just consider myself like an educator. I like to teach people how to do these and how to use these tools in order to get different things out of them. Right. And you can see here, this is like a very kind of Yoshitaka Amano inspired art of a, and that's the interesting thing. Yoshitaka Amano might never draw a Dakini, but all of a sudden, and this is where I really draw the lines. This might never be drawn as a Dakini in this style. But now that we have this technology, we're able to allow them to manifest, so to speak, right? It's like they can manifest in this beautiful style because they are themselves, these depictions of beauty itself and these styles that we are so attracted to, right? These incredibly breathtaking styles. Sometimes I listen to a symphony, like a music symphony. This goes to the much larger point of kind of seeing everything as that divine manifestation of Dakini. Like when you listen to a really lovely song and you hear and you just in your practice, you know that you can take that song and you can almost you offer it back to the deities and you offer because you're so in love with the song. Well, I'm also so in love with I have nothing but respect and love for Yoshitaka Amano's style and the work that they create. So can I take that and offer it back in the manifestation of a dakini? The thing is, we never use these for any commercial purposes. We never try to make any money out of these or anything like that. And that's really important because ultimately, again, they're borrowing, and this is the big controversy that's coming in with AI as well. They're borrowing on the works of millions of people to the point of like, you can't say that this is purely this artist or this artist. There's no way to differentiate that because millions of artists have been fed into these models. But to allow them to sort of create all of these different, very, very different variations, we look at them and we say, this is beautiful in their own right. This is gorgeous in their own right. But can we take them and again, so that we can offer them back in to and allow us to see the many faces of the Dakini, so to speak, to be able to see the many faces of the Dakini without ever trying to profit off of these or do anything with them. Because again, I think that's a very difficult place that currently AI art is struggling with is its recognition as a sort of a standalone medium of creation and like sovereign ownership of intellectual property because I guess again by legality the intellectual property becomes very weird here and I think that's why I'm always very hesitant with it. And I say to people, you know what, take it as it is, as this beautiful manifestation and enjoy it for your personal use, but also thank the millions of creators who have come together to try to even allow this to be the possible.
Mhm. In terms of AI art as aid to our practice of
Mhm.
Dakini practice, and what do you see as limitations and the potential in this context?
Mm.
It's kind of, make it this little more specific to the spiritual practitioner. Perhaps those of us who are viewing this podcast may practice Dakinis. And
Yeah,
so how that can
it's
help or the
it's a great question, Khandro-la. I can talk about how I've been using it sort of for my own practice and aid as well as sort of more generally. The first thing that I will say is that you know those millions of artists who have come together to even allow this picture or this picture or this picture to be possible. You realize just how like this codependency in
right.
Buddhism, like this codependent originate. For me, that like AI really opens that up because it, like I said earlier, you cannot point at a single bit and say, oh, that's no, it's all there's no inherently existent part of AI that you can point, and AI has really made me has set this into my mind very strongly, especially when these pictures sort of arise. The way that I would say like that I've been using them for my practice sort of on a like more practical sense as well is they're really great at allowing me to give faces to the Dakini that for me stick more in my mind, that
Mm,
relate more to me. Right. So one of my particular favorite pieces is this one. I really am drawn to this piece, and I can't quite tell you why. But when I'm doing a practice, this bit relates to me, her face here relates to me more than certain depictions that I see in like in other older Tanka paintings. And it's again, if you remember, the Tanka paintings were created culturally at a different time to us. We
right.
don't we for 1,000 years ago, you know, etc. And so these are the styles that you grew up with, and now you have much more easily in your mind, so
Mhm,
to speak. So she comes up for me. There are some depictions of her that easily come up for me in my mind as I'm practicing and allows me to actually manifest and visualize her much more vividly. Like she becomes much more moving and less static. I remember that when I started my practice and I would try to sort of visualize and manifest it like a Vajrayogini or the Taki, and they would be very kind of static. They wouldn't feel alive.
mhm,
But AI has helped me to give them for myself again because they're more I can relate to them more. I can relate to the art style more. A more lived experience, a more sort of
mhm,
lived motion with like sort of vitality within them. And the other thing is that they've helped me to really just understand just the divine purity of everything, like the manifestation of the Dakini and everything that you see. Like sometimes we like to look at things and we say, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, like I was saying earlier with technology. But again, AI art in part has really helped me to understand that actually where this Dakini came from, I could not tell you perfectly, right? Like again, it's like sure, I can tell you in theory, oh yes, millions of vector embeddings that are sort of like trying to reduce the loss function, blah blah. I could tell you the mathematics that go behind an AI model. But these abstract mathematics help you to create something that I can actually relate with at an emotional
mhm.
level. And
Yeah.
that to me
Mm,
really elevates my connection to them in a very profound sense. And I think that's where AI can really, really help us. Now, if you allow me, I'll just say something very important on the limitations. Right now, AI really struggles to do something specific. You know, an artist, if I said to an artist, can you please draw a Damaru, a Dakini holding a Damaru, an artist would have no problem doing this. But AI right now really struggles with this specific implements. So, and this is why I also say don't rely on these as your main depictions of your Dakinis. Help use them in order to aid you. But like right now, AI really struggles with giving anything in an image a particular, like a Vajra or a Damaru or bone implements in a particular place. It is free creating, right? Because it's so
mhm,
complex, it's very free creating. It is getting better, and we are able to now start to sort of specify areas. And I can say, okay, can you please give me a Damaru in her right hand? And can you please give me like a thigh bone trumpet in her left hand? We can start to do these things slowly. And I think as it improves, we will be able to do this more. But that's currently one of the biggest limitations in general. It's the same thing with the LLMs. When I am talking to an AI and it's trying to embody an old master, the issue is that the AI will also add things, a few things here and there. And again, if it's getting better over time, but it's because they're such complex models, they sometimes get too complex for their own sake, and so we can't actually control them. They're
mm.
wild, they're untamed, kind of like the Dakini in a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. You said so many interesting points, like as a practitioner's so-called visualization, right? it's a reflection. I often use this metaphor, reflection on the surface of the lake,
Yeah.
expressions. Now what we call appearances. So everything is appearances. Then you mentioned something about that from your perspective of seeing everything as an expression of this pure mind or primordial purities. So traditional tanka, for example, Machi Clapton.
Hmm.
And so then this, when I look at this, it started alive in the surface of the lake
Hmm.
of my mind. In that sense, I'm so attracted by this kind of creative expressions because makes traditional visualization alive and dynamic and creative and wild.
Yes.
Yeah, not
Yes.
static.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
this kind of discovery, exploratory approach, I love so much. Mm.
Yeah, I truly think that there is something behind this aspect of this discovery, exploratory. Like I can't force this image into becoming, and this is why it's like you also hear some artists that talk about this. You know, they say some artists say when I start the image, I don't know how it's going to look like when it's finished, but I sort of go with the process. In some sense, when you are trying to do AI art, what you're doing is you're tweaking the parameters, you're tweaking the input. But then once you've done the input, you let go and you just discover and let it sort of unravel itself. Again, you explore this dynamic creation. And to me, there is really nothing more that teaches me about the Dakini principle in my life than this sort of process, because we have a real tendency to really want to like control everything, structure everything. We're like, oh, well, I
Yeah.
want it this way, I want it that way. I have expectations of how this should turn. And AI art is one of those areas where is thrown out the window. AI art positively surprises me every time I put input into it. AI art always comes up with things that I would have never imagined. Like one good example is this one of Vajra Dakini to some degree. And this was really interesting. I mean, again, it's really interesting. It's sort of, I didn't expect that it would merge the water and the aspect of her as
Mm.
a beautiful feminine figure with the water so well. And it creates really interesting versions that it continues to sort of elaborate on and work with. Another areas of like, when I tell it like white skin with like a white palish skin with reddish hue, and it comes up with this like actually this vibrant fire that like erodes around her and just really captures me like in a way that I could not have ever expected. So you really learn to let go. You really learn to
Hmm.
just let go
Yeah.
and let it do its thing, which is again why I don't think that it's traditional art, and I don't think that like yeah the artist here is the AI, and the AI doesn't even know that it's the artist. So who knows? Who knows where this is going to go in the future? But yeah, that's
Hmm. Yeah, so traditionally, tantric practitioners, when they visualize in generation stage, try to mold the visualization in a
mm,
certain way. Although visualization is empty and the appearance is empty, right?
right,
But then we're trying to bring that to the certain kind of mold the visualization. So that has been problem. So more like unfold.
right.
I like that terminology.
Yes, yeah.
Unfold. Let the visualization of Dakini unfold on
Hmm.
the surface of the lake that is mind, become calm, pure, and
Mm.
transparent, then anything could be possible. This kind of AI reminds me of, in a sense, nature of mind and the nature of
Yeah.
appearance and nature of phenomena. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
Very
It's
interesting.
such a beautiful way of putting it, Khandro-la. I definitely, for me, that resonates so much because I know how I started in Tantra, especially, and I know that I was very much clinging to appearance and not letting anything unfold. And then as my practice unfolded itself, I was able to more and more so let go of and let these things like these appearances unfold within themselves in the clear mirror lake of your mind. Like you're just allowing quiet, you're calming it down and you're letting what comes come. And you're not trying to grasp and hold and pull, but you're letting it just, again, you're letting it manifest. And this is something that, again, I have struggled with a long time But that's really the part that I felt like AI art has kind of helped me with, because I'm in a conscious way here letting go and cannot control the outcome. Okay, well, if I'm doing this here, like when I'm just creating these beautiful, beautiful appearances of the dakinis, why can't I do this during my practice? Why can't I do this during my meditation? Why can't I let my practice unfold as well? I
Yeah,
definitely.
the key is our own direct experience, right? So whatever gives us that feeling, sense of embodiment, if
Yeah.
we are doing a self-visualization or even the front generation, we want to have this experience of Magic Clapton is here, right
Mhm.
now, how I
Yes.
feel, instead of how she look. That is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
secondary. And
Yeah.
first, we need to have a glimpse, taste of the existence of or the presence of magic or dakinis right here, right now. So whatever gives that feeling to the practitioners, definitely some AI art gives me that feeling. Then, of course, traditionally, each part has a symbolism. So that's the second maybe stage.
Yeah.
For example, if a practitioner look at the malu, then the mind of emptiness or the mind of impermanence or so forth. So those specificity comes after the direct experience of presence of deity or dakinis in terms of visualization.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure you've seen this so much where, because I know this is in my practice, you can get very tied down with the specifics. You're like, okay, well, I have to, you do these very complex visualizations, and when you're a beginner, you're struggling, you're falling apart. But I really love how you put it there. If I could ask you a question as well, Khandro-la, because of sort of the history and the journey that you've come from, you've been steeped into the traditions of this lineage. Like I take, by your virtue and the amazing work that you do at Dakini's Whisper. And we get this benefit of entering into a very contemporary way. But for you, as a very sort of you're a tradition a practitioner who's come from a sort of a more traditional route, and yet you say that for you this is really resonating. Like a lot of this art really resonates for you. Do you think that this is a direction that is going to be potentially, like, how do you think this would sit with the more traditional institutions like Ganden Monastery, or like if just what do you think the attitude is going to be as time evolves, I think, towards these sort of arts in the traditional sense?
I think tradition will not change. Maybe
Hmm.
maintain the tradition as a tradition. And some practitioner like
Mm.
me, actually, since I was young, I very much drawn onto the discovering art or something going beyond the tradition. But in order to really come to this point means I'm really drawn onto the intersection of spirituality and AI and this kind of AI art, and using the AI art as an aid to the traditional practice. For me, this is a kind of natural progression or my journey, part of my journey. But yeah, traditions are so beautiful itself by itself.
Yeah.
But for example, when we talk about the lineage, maintaining lineage or the
Mm.
preserving lineage, it's talking about one's own experience and realization.
Mm.
And so in that case, if we contemporary people started to not have the realization, just following the tradition or the ritual, very superficial, ritualistic, and not really connecting the direct experience and stabilizing it and come to realization. Then lineage will be just a name of the
Yes.
lineage.
Yes.
So lineage
Yeah.
should have all the practitioners, disciple, masters, realization embedded. So right now we are living in this complex world, a modern world. As long as we start to have this kind of direct experience through whatever medium or the method or modality we can use for our
Mm.
own practice, and that will serve purpose, that will be great. But
I,
since early 90s, personal computer started, I have this idea about this visualization and creating a possibility of how amazing I'm creating in my mind. Like you talking about Dakini art, right? I think each practitioner who does visualization, tantric practice is, in a sense, Dakini art. They are creating one's own Dakinis
Yes.
in their own mind,
Yeah.
right? Not necessarily all the same. Some people have a
Mhm.
little more, all different flavors, right?
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
thought about, it would be awesome to create like a whole visualization with AI. Back old days we didn't call AI, but called we used the coding, writing code and the cat,
Mm.
using a cat and
Yes, you're right. Right.
cats, yeah, all those things and. The possibility of using technology. I was not afraid of, actually thrilled by the advancement of technology. Then now we came to this point, and even the novice like me can kind of play with this and appreciate the
Yeah.
benefits of this kind of art to help
That's
me
that
to
that that
advance this journey. Mhm.
it's that's such an important point that you made as well. I think I just and there's so much to go through there, but like, I really appreciate your view of this because I think you have this right balance of bravely being able to kind of jump into and embrace. Because again, I always say this, like to people, I don't think Dharma is fragile. I think Dharma has always evolved, and I've said this to you before as well, Khandro-la. Dharma has always evolved where it has gone culturally, but also with the times. And there is this twofold part to religion, and I think this is what people always end up mixing up is if you try to change tradition, you will actually end up hurting the people who have a very rigid, like who have a very strong background within that tradition. For them, they don't need anything else, and that's good because that's their entire what John Searle in cognitive science is called sort of their background, their salience background. So they, this is the way that they understand the world, and you don't need, culturally, they are perfectly situated in that. And then, of course, you have the people who are on the other side, like this is the problem that like Tibetan Buddhism encountered when it went into the West, and and now it has to really come into touch with all of this very different, like diametrically opposed cultural values and cultural tradition.
Mhm.
And obviously, this is a much, much bigger topic that we can get into, but a very, very, very big topic. But the last thing that you said there, which is even novices can start to play with this and generate beautiful, beautiful art. I'm a novice. I have no idea. Again, I am not an artist. My wife is. I'm not an artist. And I'm always really jealous of the work that she does. I'm just like, oh, this is so beautiful. Like I love it. I engage with it. But at the same time, I have ideas in my mind and I can't make them come alive the way that she does on pen and paper. But that's what AI allows you to do. It sort of allows you to just take a rough idea that you have and and just allow it to just and it might not turn out the way you expect it to. It never does, but at least it has allowed you to play with it, visualize it, and maybe that is a way of you being able to sort of again increase your relationship, increase that devotion in that relationship with those beautiful manifestations that then you end up creating because that was a very private and personal thing that you did.
Yeah, and also another thing is really a good reminder of the appearance emptiness, emptiness appearance,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
illusionary nature of everything. We
Yes.
used to call the virtual reality, right? Back those the 90s, everything is virtual. Wow, this is Buddhism.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything virtual and but
Yeah.
doesn't mean it does not have a meaning. So that's the thing, relative reality, ultimate
Yeah.
reality, how
Yeah.
we can bring that to our daily life, day-to-day life, how we can live our life based on that, while we rest completely in the ultimate reality or the recognizing that nature of emptiness, then how we can relate to everybody, every sentient being, every neighbor, and friends and enemy, strangers in a relative level with love and kindness. So that's I think, right, that's the place where our practice comes in. So this kind of modality gives us a good reminder.